Hello, my amazing developers. So, a couple of months back, I had an opportunity to create an iOS application at work that required users to record a video of themselves while reading out a message from the script. And at the end of the recording, they could send themselves a copy of the video by entering their email address. Now, I was sitting there in the requirements gathering process, and I was thinking it's a fairly simple process by using UI image picker controller, where I have to only record the video, and at the end of the video, I had just to upload it to a cloud service where I could send out an email to the user. But I was wrong. The company requirements were quite different. Company requirements stated that we have to start with an intro, a video, close the video with an outro, burn our logo, and have a business market stock ticker, you could say, at the below part of the video, and all of this should be displayed on the iOS device. And they requested iPad is a fairly bigger device, so let's use an iPad application rather than iPhone. So one thing came to my mind was AVFoundation. I knew I had to use AVFoundation because it's only possible to settle all these requirements by using AVFoundation. As you guys know, AVFoundation is not a simple framework. We have to have in-depth knowledge about Apple's framework, use camera features, and use lots of code glued together to create a camera application. So this is my journey. I'll be explaining you guys how to create camera application in a much simplified way. I have decided to create this tutorial into multi-video series, so it is a bit easier for me to explain and you also to grasp the knowledge that I'm about to share. At the end of the tutorial, you'll be able to create yourself applications similar to TikTok or even beautiful applications, and it's up to your imagination. So let's get started. Now I have Xcode opened up over here. I'm going to create a new Xcode project. Let's select iOS and single view application. I'm going to give it a name, become a presenter, and the organization, you can name it whatever you want. I'm having it as my own name. And the bundle identifier is the one that uniquely identifies your application. Let's keep the language as Swift and the user interface as storyboard. Let's keep the rest of the stuff as off. Click next. Choose the developer folder or wherever you want to save. Click create. No author information was supplied by a version control system. Let's click cancel and ignore that. Let's expand Xcode. Select iPhone 11 Pro Max, hit run. Let's bring up iPhone simulator over here. So we can have this in the capture window. Brilliant. Our application is now up and running. We'll click stop. Now, what I want to do is create a view controller that will be the initial view controller for our application. So for that, I'm going to name it launch view controller. But before that, let's organize the files a bit. So I'm going to create a new group called view controllers, and I'm going to create a subgroup called view controller. Move the initially created view controller under that. Forget about it, as we are going to create our own. Launch and create new file. Select Cocoa Touch. Type in the subclass of UI view controller, and let's have the name of the class is launch view controller. Language is Swift. Also, I would like to create a nib file. Yes. Click create. We have launch view controller. Let's clean up the code a bit. Next, we are going to specify launch view controller as the initial view controller. So for that, let's head to the scene delegate and enter some specific code over here. Let's have a variable for the launch view controller, nib name. We need to have a nib name for a variable. So let's have a string describing launch view controller.self. Use the nib name as that one. Let's get rid of this window over here so we can have more space, and use the bundle name. And we have window.root view controller is the launch view controller now. And one more function, make the keys invisible. Now, before we build and run the application, I would like to speak about something over here. As you notice, we are writing our code in the scene delegate. This is because the application, it's targeting iOS 13 and above. So scene delegate is introduced in iOS 13. But what if we want to target our application lower than iOS 13? Well, I'll be covering another video how to set up and launch your application for lower than iOS 13 as well as iOS 13 and above. So stay tuned to the channel, and I'll be posting the link of the video in the description. So make sure you come back and check the video out. So now let's go back to the scene delegate and confirm our launch view controller is running. Let's click run. And as you guys see, it's white. So we really can't make a difference whether this is the old view controller or is it our new launch view controller. So let's do some changes about that. Go back to the launch view controller and let's have some evident change over here. We're going to say view.background color into something really obvious, that is red. And we're going to build and run the app, and we see it's red. That means our launch view controller code was set up correctly. Next, before we can present the camera overlay, we need to require certain permissions from the user. We are going to require 3 permissions from the user. Number 1 is the camera permission. Number 2 is the microphone, and number 3 is to save to the photo library. So let's create a view that is going to request authorization to use camera from the user. We are back in the project, and we're going to create a new group called views. Here I'm going to create another group inside it called request authorization, another group called camera, and now I'm going to create new file, Cocoa Touch class, UI view, request camera authorization view. I'm going to select the file, so click create, and similarly I'm going to create the view file. Keep the same name as before, click create. Next, let's select our view and click on size, freeform, and give it a height of 600. Now, why I'm doing this is because any view that I create that is not the view of a view controller, I like to keep it a bit smaller than its full size. So as you saw, we had the size as inferred. That means it's the size of the view controller. So in order to give it a custom width or height, you need to change it to freeform. That's what I have done now and give it a height of 600. Next, let's go to the Swift file and clean up some code and write in our view setup code. I'm going to override the init method of the frame and the coder. As well as create a private function called custom init and call this custom init in both of the overridden init functions. Here I'm going to load the nib. Sorry, missed out the frame. Okay. Bundle.main, nib name. So this self.self is the same way as we could write the name of the view, request camera authorization view.self, or I'm just saving myself some typing by saying self.self. Bundle.load nib name, owner is self, options is nil, add view to the parent view. Set the frame to the bounds of the parent. Set the auto resizing mask as flexible width and flexible height so it grows according to its parent. This is done now. Let's head back to the nib file. Click on the file owner and let's write in the file name of the view, as well as head to the I keep forgetting its name, the connections inspector, I believe it's called. Click on content view and assign to the parent. Next, we are going to add some views inside this view. So for that, open up library, bring in image view, two labels, and a button. For the image view, I'm going to specify its image as camera. This is using the SF symbols names. You could use your own icons and images and adding them to the assets library and load it up over here. It's up to you. I'm using SF symbols. This is something new that iOS 13 has it from Apple. I'm going to specify the tint color. Let's have it light gray color. And this will be our title label. So let's give it a name of camera authorization. And I'm going to specify the constraints that it's center aligned vertically and center aligned horizontally. And I'm going to give it the font style of title 1. Done with it. Let's keep the default color. Now all the other views will be depending on the title label. So let's click the image view Give it a width and height constraint of 60 and a bottom constraint to the title label. Give it a good space of 30 and also specify the horizontal constraint. Click on the message label and write in some message. Just write some message that is useful for your users. Also do the same thing as horizontal align. Let's keep the leading and trailing of 20 from both sides, as well as some top space to the title label of 16 this time. And as you can see, it's not displaying the full message. So for that, we're going to click on lines. From 1, we're going to change it to 0 and also make the center align. As well as I'm going to have the color as a slightly different one. Let's give it light gray, or rather a different color. Let's try dark gray color. That looks nice. This is our button. We're going to name it allow. Do the same thing over here for the constraint for the horizontal align. Top, let's give it a space of 30, width of 80, height of 50, and let's give it a background color, custom, here 15, 15, 15, this color, so it's not pure black, it's something a little bit off than that. And the tint color, let's give it a white color. That looks nice now. So next, we're going to give these views some custom labels. Camera image view, let's call this as title label, message label, action button. Now, I like to personally give them the labels because if we have somewhat a different name in the IB outlets, it will not be overridden. It will keep the same name as our label. So this is just my personal preference. You can have your own way. Next, let's go to the Swift file and connect the IB outlets. Let's have it for the camera, image view, UI image view, title label is of type UI label, all right, that's done now. Let's head back to the lib file, select the file owner, head to the connections, and quickly connect the IB outlets. Message to the message, title to the title. Next, let's connect the allow button to its proper handler. So for that, let's go back to the Swift file, and this time create a function with IB action name before it, and let's have the name as action button handler. And what we need to do is, when the action button is tapped, we need to notify the implementing class that this button was fired. So we are going to use a delegate method for that. So let's create a delegate with the same name and have as class type function request camera authorization tapped. Let's have a delegate over here with the same type, and this delegate will be called when function when the button is tapped, sorry. So now our view code is ready. Let's head back to the launch view controller and implement a request camera authorization view to be added into the view. Let's remove the color that we added before, create ourselves a private extension, create a function called setup views, make sure we call the setup views in the view did load, create an instance of the request authorization view of the delegate. Let's clean up some space from here and hide the bar. Make sure we turn off the auto resizing mask, so as we are going to apply constraints. View add subview, request, NS layout constraint, activate constraints. Copy this, paste it here, name it leading, constraint equals to views leading. Copy paste it 4 times, as we are going to do it for the other constraints, other anchors. This time for trailing, view trailing, and finally the bottom anchor, bottom. Remove the last comma, and let's build and run the app now, and to see whether request camera authorization view was added or not. Well, we got the camera authorization view here. Next, we need to see whether something happens when we tap the allow button, but nothing happens. That's because we need to assign ourselves as the delegate of the view. Let's create extension of launch view controller and say request camera authorization view delegate, have the name of the function, and print ourselves a message. Request camera authorization tapped. Let's build and run the app. Yes, stop it and run it again. And this time when I click, okay, something is wrong. Let's head back to the camera authorization. Oh yeah, we forgot to connect the IV action. So let's head back to the nib file, select the file owner, bring up the connections, select the action button, handler, select it to touch up inside, and this time when we build and run the app, click allow, we get ourselves the print message. Next, we need to have the actual code to request user's permission for the camera. So let's go ahead and do that. We are going to create a new group called controllers, a new group under that called request authorization, and a subgroup under that called camera. So I'm going to create a new file under that, Swift file this time, called request camera authorization controller. So what I'm going to do is have the function of requesting users permission in this class, and this way I need to only import AVFoundation here. Let's write the code for actual class implementation. we can request the user permission by going to AV capture device, request access for video, and this specific callback gives the boolean granted variable. Now, one piece of advice is whenever we get callbacks, we need to check whether this is running on the main thread or not. This way, if we try to do any UI related code, the application will crash. So you could try the code out, and if you get a crash, you can see whether this is being run on the background thread or the main thread. Another way you could do is ns thread, sorry, it's being renamed to thread, is main thread. So this specific returns a boolean variable where you could print and confirm this is being run on main thread or not. I have already gone through this code before, so I know that this is being run on a different thread. So I'm going back to the dispatch main. Let's create type alias so we can have the closure. Completion and an enum with the name So what we're going to do is this specific completion handler, we're going to return the status, and in the function, we need to have another parameter with this completion handler that we have created, and its type should be escaping, so that it basically tells it that it will run at a later stage. So once we have the granted here, we need to return, sorry, not return, have the completion granted. Otherwise, we will say unauthorized. Now, before we go back to the launch view controller and implement this specific code, let's create ourselves one more function that tells us about the current authorization status. This function is going to return the enum, and we are going to ask AV capture device authorization status for video, switch over the status, case authorized, it should return granted, and in case of not determined, that means the permission was not yet requested from the user, say not requested, and regardless, in all the other cases, we are going to say unauthorized. So what happens is, this specific code we are going to use for future references. That means when the permission was requested from the user one time, person stops the app, runs it back again. So the second time onwards, if the authorization is already requested from the camera, we can proceed to request other authorizations like microphone or photo library. And if everything is fine, we can proceed to the video capture. Finally, let's go and implement this code in the launch view controller. Remove the print statement over here, call our controller, request camera authorization, name it status, switch over status, And here I'm just printing the response back from the class about the status not requested. Sorry, not requested, unauthorized, unauthorized. Let's run the app and check what happens now. And we get ourselves crash. This is because in order for iOS to display a message for the user, we need to have the text of the message. That we are going to enter in info.plist. Open up info.plist, add a new property, and head down to the privacy section. Say privacy camera usage description, and give yourself a good message. This app requires camera. I'm just writing some basic text. You should actually write something nice for the user. This is why we have a different view to present to the user before requesting for the permission, and then have this message also. Let's run the app one more time. Click on allow, and we get ourselves this message. The camera presenter would like to request the camera. This app requires camera. This is our message that we have written in info.plist. I could say not allow, don't allow, or okay. Let's click OK, and we see granted is printed from our permission. Now, if I stop the app and run it one more time, you will notice I don't get this screen, so I cannot test the other state. What I need to do actually is stop the app, delete it, and relaunch it. So click allow this time. I've been given this message, and let's say don't allow. So it gives me unauthorized. So that means this is fine. Let's keep it with granted state one more time. Delete the app, relaunch it, click allow, no, granted. Perfect. So this concludes our video for part 1 of the video series for AVFoundation. We have just requested the camera permission as of now. We have tons and tons of code to write for making it into a full camera application. In the next series, we are going to talk about microphone permission, photo library, how to capture the video, display overlay, and burn the logo, display the logo for as an overlay, join the assets on the device and transcode it to a reasonable size, upload it to a cloud service, and that's about it. So we are going in much more detail in future. So stay tuned for the channel, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you like the video, click like. And if you want me to cover in detail for additional stuff, please mention in the comments. All right. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.